we'll be sending out the recording to everybody later on too, so you can get a repeat, and we're going to be going over a lot of fun financial nuggets here that you can take away, and you'll definitely want to listen to that again. So we'll be sending out an email to all the people that registered. Also, if you are a client of Practice Promotions, on our Practice Promotions Insider Facebook group, I really hope you're part of that. We'll be posting that up there too, so you can watch the webinar and review all the great stuff that we'll go over here today. All right, so get any kind of questions, just pop that up in the chat box. I am very happy to introduce our guest speaker for today, Christopher Music from Econologics, and he's also the creator of the Private Practice Millionaire and the founder of Econologics Results-Based Financial Planning System. Christopher is a 25-year veteran of the financial planning and best-selling author and personal financial expert. He's been seen on NBC, CBS, ABC, and Fox affiliates, as well as being in Forbes magazine, Newsweek, the Wall Street Journal, and various healthcare publications. And I have known Chris for a very long time here. He's a fantastic guy, personal friend, but I'm also a client of Chris's and have been through his courses. He's got some amazing stuff that you just don't get anywhere else really in the financial industry. And it's super, super focused, laser focused on helping private practice healthcare owners. So welcome, Chris. Good to have you on the call today.
Thanks, Neil.
Awesome. Great. So we're going to get rock and rolling here. So what we're going to do is I will give you a little bit of some nuggets here on how to increase the money within your practice. And Chris is going to give you all his, well, not all, but some really good info today on how to really make that money work for you to take home. All right, because at the end of the day, you work hard, we bust our butts as private practice owners. We help a lot of people, and we want to make sure we get rewarded well for that and have the opportunities that we want in life and the financial freedom to do things that we want. So let's get rocking here. So just a little housekeeping. This time is yours. You jumped on the call here, took some time out of your day. So just make sure that you're focused. You're not turn off the distractions, the Facebook, the email, because you really want to get the information out of here and then be able to apply it when you get back. So take notes. That's very important. Always retain a lot more when you take notes. And then what I like to recommend too is just as you're taking notes, have a little separate sheet or something where you could jot down quick action steps that you could do after the call. So it's one thing just to get information, but it's very, very important to have an action step to do something about it afterwards. At the end of the webinar here, Chris is going to give some more information about how to get in contact with him and some great tools that he has available for private practice owners. I did this one way back. It was really good. It's called the Financial Prosperity Index, and it really helps you understand where the heck you are financially in the practice and in your life so that you can see where you need to make improvements. So I highly recommend that you jump on the financialprosperityindex.com, but wait until the end, please, so that you can pay attention here. But we'll be putting that up then again at the end, and then also we'll put up in the link for everybody to jump on with that. All right, so just let's talk a little bit here about making money in your practice. So is it about money? Money is very important in the practice, but at first and foremost, it's always about purpose. So you want to make sure that everybody in your practice is rallied behind your purpose of helping people. That's first and foremost, but you want to make sure that you're getting well paid for it. And there's no point in just struggling and beating the dead horse if that's what it feels like. Sometimes in practice, it does feel like you're pushing your freight train up a hill, but you have to get through that, and then you have to put in systems in place for different areas in your practice so that you can be making more money and be financially free. So first off, in making more money in your practice, realize that marketing is what fills your practice. You have to be able to get bodies in the door to treat, right? And you want to make sure that you have a full schedule, your staff has a full schedule, Everybody is as maximally and happily productive as possible. Marketing puts people on the plinth, right? Bottom line. So make sure that you have a great marketing plan, that you are putting a lot of attention on marketing to make that happen. Now, one problem that I see consistently in practice is that they work hard on marketing to get people in the door, but then they have a leaky bucket. People drop off after 4, 5, 6, 8 visits. They're not completing a full plan of care because they got their pain reduced. They feel okay, they drop, right? They're looking at cost. So how you set up your organization within the clinic is vital, and training is vital on the front desk with the therapist so that you help that patient get their full plan of care, get a complete result where they're fully rehabilitated and strong and ready to go, and their problem's not going to come back, right? And that just means more money also coming in from those treatments that you planned out for. Next, you want to make sure you have fast, accurate billing and collections. This is very important today because if you mess up on your bills and you don't get paid for 2 months, or you have to spend a lot of extra work to get collected, that's a problem. And then you want to make sure that you're asking for the money on a consistent basis. How often are you renegotiating your insurance contracts? Set the bar high of what you know you need to make in your practice and your profit margins, and then go out and work on negotiating those contracts. Don't take the cheap contracts just because you need to fill the practice. That's not the way you go about it. That's where you use marketing. You want to get the people with the best insurance contracts and also look for cash-paying patients in there. Next, you want to work on improving patient buy-in so that you can increase your profits. Marketing is what really helps create the understanding with the patient. The more that they understand, the more value they see in you because of your marketing, from your website to materials you give them in the office, the more they're going to get themselves on board to be part of that journey, and also their spouse, which is often a financial roadblock. And you want to make sure you set a reality of what to expect from the get-go with that patient. And again, if anybody else who's made in the financial decision, because a lot of times people are paying from their deductible, so they might be paying $1,000 to come see you. Right? So you have to really set that reality of what they're going to expect. And then you want to make sure that you have your marketing, everything following up through the course of treatment so that you prevent those drops from happening and keep the engagement going. And then make sure you handle financials beforehand with the patient. So this is where ideally you've verified the insurance. They're coming in, the front desk knows to handle the patient. If they have a large deductible and they're going to pay mostly out of pocket, this is where you got to really show value. So if you, good training point with the front desk is saying, for example, with the patient coming in, hey, you've got arthritis in that knee, let's take care of it now before you have to go get an MRI on it, which is going to cost you a lot more money, or you're going to have to maybe eventually have a surgery or medications, and what is that going to cost you? So let's fix it now. That's the value versus what does it cost me per treatment. And then make sure that you're trying to separate the physical therapist from any financial decisions. This is really an administration function. So when, they may need to go into the back office, have a conversation with the billing officer or some kind of person who's good in sales, good communicator, so that financial arrangement can be done, and the PT is there to recommend the course of treatment, not make financial decisions on the course of treatment, all right? So that's a good separator there. And then obviously have different things in play so that the patient feels like they've got some options. If they're really hard for money, like do you have any kind of payment plans that they can get their care that they need, but and come for the full course of treatment, and that financial arrangement is made. And then in handling the patient finances, let's make sure that, again, those arrangements are done beforehand, that we're separating the PT from those decisions, and that we set up the expectation before discharge of what's next. Like, hey, if you need us, you can come back for care. Often it's a quicker treatment. Don't wait. It'll take longer, cost you more. Also, we offer these other programs afterwards that you can come in for, come back for care on a repeat basis, and get tune-ups. So just make sure there's the expectation before discharge that they can come back for care, what that would cost them approximately, and those kind of things. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Chris here. He's going to give you some great insights on money management and what to do with all that money you're making in the practice, and make sure you're bringing it home.
Wonderful. Okay, so here we go.
All right. Okay, I can see
my
your
screen's
screen.
being shared. Fabulous.
Yep.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, good. So let me turn on my slideshow here so we can take through our process. All right. So this is the 3 secrets of having more money, how to maximize your take home from the practice. Now, I've been a financial advisor for 25 years, as Neil mentioned. I have a master's degree in business administration, which really doesn't mean anything because I had to go through the school of hard knocks like many of you have to try to figure out how to be successful in practice. But I did it, and I built up a professional practice in the world of financial planning, sold it to an associate for twice the average market value back in 2002, became a business consultant in many different areas, and then in 2008, during the Great Recession, I founded Econologics, which is a results-based financial planning system. Why? Well, I realized all professionals like you were doing very well in practice, but normally we don't really translate that wealth into the home. And that's the reason why we do this, economically speaking. So I had to create a system that worked really for everyone on how to bring the value that's created in a professional practice into a home and be able to then grow and protect that wealth for you and your family as you go through your life as a private practice professional. You have a very unique experience, very different than really anybody else, your employees, your friends, people who work for corporations. You have a very interesting experience as a private practice owner. So we focus exclusively and solely on you. Now, as we go on here, we want to talk about these secrets to building a profitable practice. Well, it's really intertwines between the practice itself and the household. Consider your household like a parent company, because who owns the practice? You do, right? Or you and your spouse? Well, you're a parent company. You're a senior to that practice. That practice is an asset to you, just like a piece of real estate or a retirement plan or any other asset that you might own. And the whole purpose of these economic activities is to flow profit up to the household so that you can enjoy the fruits of your labor. Well, there are ways, there is technology on how to maximize not only the wealth in the practice, but what you experience as a practice owner, so you don't end up working a whole lifetime and having really not much to show for it, which unfortunately is more of the norm these days. So the first thing you have to do is recognize that you are in the marketing business. Now, I've known Neil for a very long time, and he's a rock star marketer. Okay, so you have to be a rock star marketer. Now, why is that? Because that is your communication line. That is your saying hello to your public. They have no idea you're there unless you tell them you are there. So if you want to make more money, you have to market more. And that's really what it comes down to. It might not be considered maybe a secret. It seems to be, because the number one thing we hear from people when we try to get them to do personal financial planning is, Christopher, I love your program. I would love to do it. I just don't have the money. You don't have the money. Okay, that makes no sense to me. Because if you're in private practice, one of the fundamental actions you have to master, besides PT therapy, is marketing. And when you master marketing, what does that mean? That means having more people to come into your business than you can service. That's what it means. That's when you know you're good at marketing. There's too many people. There's too many people who want our therapy. That's when you know you're really good at marketing. If you're not there yet, guess what? Study more, drill more, and do more marketing, and you will start to see a lot more income. That is the number one point that actually creates income for a practice. Now, of course, you have to run your staff, and you have to run the machine so that it is very tight, of course. But marketing is really the fundamental where it comes in. Now, let me explain just something real quickly to you. We fail in discerning between what is an expense and what is an investment. Let's clarify what those are. An expense is defined as an outlay of money that is immediately consumed or is consumed in a short period of time. So expenses would be like rent. In 30 days, the rent's gone. Your utilities, in 30 days, that utility is used up. Office supplies, those are expenses. Cars would be an expense. Okay. Now, what is then an investment? An investment is an outlay of money that provides future income and value. Okay, an outlay of money that produces future income and value. So recognize that both of those are outlays of money. But the investment, such as equipment, such as like a retirement account, such as marketing in your practice, such as a building. Now, things like that create future income and value. So here's the dividing point. And this, you can tell right where you are financially right now based on how well you can discern between where your money goes as an expense or as an investment. Those who put more of their money outlay into investments, increased knowledge, increased ability, staff, equipment, assets, things like that, are going to have more money and income than those who expend that money on something that is not going to create future value. So you see where the problem comes in. So we often fail to recognize that marketing is an investment and not an expense. Do you see? Especially when done correctly, because marketing should produce 5, 10 times or more the cost in additional revenue to your company. That's when you know it's decent marketing. So enough about that. Let's move on to the next one. You got to maximize the value of your business. Now, what are you going to do with your business? You're going to transition the value of that someday. Now, you're going to build a business, and you're a professional investor as an owner of a professional practice. You own that business. I will tell you, in my experience, that when you realize that you're not building it for you, you are building it for the next owner. When you realize that, you will start to create a lot more value in that business. You'll turn it more into an asset. Because why do we have a professional practice? You decided to go into practice on your own. I mean, gosh, I can't imagine the level of courage it takes to do that. I mean, I've done it for 25 years, but where did you learn about how to run a business? In PT school or in elementary school, middle school, high school, college? I mean, anywhere, right? You're not going to learn about business. And yet you decided, in your wisdom, to go out there and start your own practice. I mean, God bless you. That is amazing to me. But why'd you do it? Well, to make money, to practice therapy in your own way, which is, of course, the correct way. To do, you have the freedom of your schedule and all these things. I get that. But there's going to come a time where your body is going to get older. That's just kind of how the universe works. And you're going to maybe want to slow down or do something else. So if you don't build that practice for somebody else, then what's going to happen to it? It's just going to die on the vine, because there's not going to be a market for it. There's not going to be anything there that's worth something to somebody else. Do you see? So one of the fundamentals of financial planning, this is financial planning, is to build that business so that it would realize in a sale really the top 10% of what the industry would pay. Now, to do that, you need to build a business that a buyer would pay you the top 10% of prices of what the industry would pay. Do you see? So there has to be value given before value received. And I'm going to show you a little bit of how to do that, because there is a sequential plan on how to create that maximized value in your business. So we'll come back to that a little bit more too. Now you make a lot of money. Okay, well now in PT, if you're bringing home 20% of gross in profit, salary, and perks, that's what I consider the gross profit, 20% or more, that's where you should be. I went to a PT conference a year ago or two, and they said, well, 8% is a good profit margin. That's the average profit margin. No, it's not. You can't make it on an 8% profit margin. You have to be looking at least 20% or more to make it a business that an investor would buy for the level of risk that's inherent in that kind of a professional practice. More like 25 or 30 if you can get there. But I know the economics of PT make it hard to do that, primarily because of personnel cost. Okay, fine. But you have to make a lot of money. Now, when you make a lot of money, guess what happens? The tax man comes around and says, you got to pay us a lot more taxes. Okay, so where do we go for our advice? Well, we go to accountants. On survey, I just did a survey of a bunch of professionals, And I realized that 33% of private practice professionals go to their accountant for financial planning advice. Okay, so why is that a problem? Well, recognize, please, that your accountant is a historian. They reconcile and put the numbers in the boxes of all the stuff you have done, all the transactions you've already committed. A financial planner is one who's looking at your future financial transactions, as many as 30, 40, 50 years from now. Accountant doesn't do that. So when you're trying to plan for the future and realizing on the advice of a person who's looking at your past, do you see why you might be getting the results you're looking for? It's not their job. It's not what they do. Further, most accountants, even on survey, only 3% of accountants will actually view themselves as a tax planner rather than as a tax preparer. What's the difference? A tax preparer is one who completes your return in alignment with the Internal Revenue Code. Okay, so, but did I say anything there about keep your taxes to a minimum? No, I didn't, because they don't really view that as their job on survey. A tax planner, however, is one that's going to be looking at your transactions, your business structure, and so on, 2, 3, 5 years down the line, and start to build your companies, your structures, your contracts, whatever it is, to start to move your money around in a way that's going to reduce your taxes systematically. And that's the key. Most tax planning is done, well, you know, you can do this and do that, it's little tips and tricks kind of thing. But rarely is there ever a system built into your wealth building machine that automatically minimizes your tax liabilities. That's a neat trick. Very rare, interestingly enough. It shouldn't be, because it should be a staple service for the private practice professional community, but it's not. So, of course, we have to build one. Now, I'll give you a couple little tax tips as we go through this process. But I wanted to kind of lay that groundwork for you. The next one is to be completely debt-free. Now, look, I know you're all under debt, and it's not uncommon for me to talk to a mid-career professional that has $1 million or more in debt. I'm not kidding, $1 million or more. And that's disaster. It's just disaster. Now, we've been programmed to believe that having things like home mortgages is a good idea. It's not. It's not an investment. Your house is not an investment. It's actually a consumer expense. If you look at it, it's a place to live. And yeah, there's value in it. I get that. But you know, your annual cost to live there is not too much more than what rent would cost somewhere else. So we have to figure out how to get out of debt. Student loans paid off. Cars. There's $1 trillion in car loans now. Talk about the next market crash. That's what's happening to cars right now is what happened to homes back in 2006, 2007. That's a problem. 1.5 trillion in student loan debt. It's insane. So please get out of debt. Now, all of it. And there's a way you can do that. There's a way to mathematically get out of debt in the lowest cost for the shortest time. And there's only one way to do that. We have a program to do that. But if you look at it, that should be the number one goal. Because once you are operating fully on cash in your household, then you're free. You don't owe anybody your next day's work except for the tax man. And if that's handled with taxes, then more of that goes to you. Business-wise, there are reasons why you'd want to have debt. I mean, there's a reason why corporations have what are called bonds, which are debts, because they can use that money to make more profit by investing it in their business rather than using cash. So there are reasons for commercial real estate and businesses to use debt, but for personal use, get out of debt, especially before you want to transition out of your professional practice. And here's the one that tends to freak people out the most. Take 10% of your practice gross income and pay yourself as the owner. That's a tough one. That's not a typo. It's not 0.1% or 0.10% or 1.0%. It is 10%. So let's say you make $1 million of gross income in your practice. Yes, that's right. I'm telling you, take $100,000, $1,333.33 a month and pay yourself as the owner toward your financial future. Now you're going to say, well, that's impossible. Well, no, it's not actually at all impossible. We have people doing it every day. We believe it's impossible because we operate from a point of view of scarcity. We think that I have $1 and this is the only dollar I have. And so therefore I have to pay for this or pay for that. Well, that's a scarcity mindset. And if you're thinking linearly like that, which is not how money works, then we end up in big trouble. So let me give you an example of how to think in more dimensions. You have $1. I was asked, do I pay off debt first or do I invest for retirement? Okay, that's always a question I get. And the answer is both and more. Well, what do you mean? Well, here's what I propose. You have $1 in your hand. Go buy $1 of marketing. Make that $1 of marketing turn into $5. And then you have $1 to pay off your debt, $1 to invest for retirement, and $3, of course, $1 for taxes, and $2 to go have some fun. Do you see? Now, do you understand how all this starts to work upon itself? If you have all 5 of these areas all working as a system, you'd be unstoppable. I mean, because they all flow one to the next, just like your life does. They can't be separated out. So that is why it's so important to look at it from this perspective. So let's talk about, just briefly here, a couple of these points. I'm going to come back around on a couple of these, but this is the basic communication that I want to give you with our time together today. So let's go on. Now, how in the world do you maximize the value of your practice? Let's go back to that point real quickly. There is a sequence. You know, if you ever notice, life logic applies to sequences. It applies to what's more important than another thing. What is senior? What is junior? And when we start working that out and do the things that are important and don't do the things that are unimportant, we get ground. We get gain. So there are really 9 steps of building value in your practice to transition it to someone else eventually, really on your terms, on your time frame, for the price you want, and under your complete control. You know that, right? You know that you can completely control the exit of your business on your terms. That's something completely under your control. It's under every single one of you who owns a practice. So the first thing we do is have a transition plan. Write down for yourself, well, how much do you want to sell it for? Under what terms? To whom? What do you want to do with your time if you're not going to be in full-time practice? There's all kinds of things we need to work out, because if you have a plan and you have a goal, guess what? You're going to be working toward that rather than just going to work every day and just kind of running on the treadmill, handling the next fire that's about to burn your feet, right? Which is typically how most of us try to run a practice. So we have to have a written transition plan. The next thing is you have to hire an expert financial team. This whole idea of doing it yourself, it'd be like me doing my own physical therapy. Are you kidding me? A, I don't know how to do it, and B, it takes 2 people to create a better result than just one person doing it by themselves, you see? So you need a good accountant. You really do. You need a good attorney for your estate plan, for your asset protection, and for your business. You need a really good business coach. This includes your marketing folks, your executive training folks, your leadership training folks. Okay, there are several consultants out there in the PT industry that can help you with that. And you really have to have a person to value your practice. It could be an accountant or a certified valuation analyst. Those are the top people that you really want to have as part of your expert team. And when you put that team together, everybody starts working in synergy with you to help you from point A to point B, rather than no one talking to each other, which of course is probably what most of you are dealing with. And you have a hodgepodge of different conflicting advice, which of course then creates more time and more money taken away from you, because you're the one who pays the price for that, unfortunately. And that really shouldn't be if you're trying to get financially independent. Number 3, effectively organize your personnel. This is where you need to put business systems and create your personnel so that they understand where they fit into your practice and how they can create for you their own income by helping the organization overall be very, very successful. You got to create stable practice systems. Okay, now creating stable practice systems is what creates value in the business. Now, if I'm a buyer, of a business. Do I want to buy the business that is dependent upon the owner to be there? Or do I want to be in a business that the owner's gone for 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, and the practice still runs? Well, as a buyer, I want the one that's owner independent. Do you see? So look, I'm going to give you a little quip here to help you kind of think about what your mindset should be related to systems. You are doing things right now in your business. I'm doing things in my business right now that I probably shouldn't be doing because my highest and best use is talking to folks like you. Your highest and best use is doing what it is you do as the owner. Okay, so whatever job you're doing in the practice right now, remember this. Your job is to work yourself out of a job. Your job is to work yourself out of a job because when you do that and you can turn over those functions to somebody else, you are free of that function. Eventually, you can move yourself out of the top of the practice itself and be able to run it as the owner from above, and everything works below you. Okay? And you need to get organized. You need to have a good coach to help you do that, to really create that value. And miraculously, you're going to build it so that other people are going to take notice and say, well, gosh, they're doing great, and the owner's not even there. I wonder what that's worth in the open marketplace. Get the idea. Okay?
Hey,
Number
Chris.
5. Yeah, Neil.
Yeah, one thing I just want to point out to everybody here, because I don't know if we covered this part yet, but in practice, we're not talking here, and Chris is not talking about transitioning or selling your practice a year from now. You might be in practice for another 20, 25 years, 30 years, whatever you feel like doing. But there, like you said before, there is an end goal. And if you, and this took me a while to really get my head around this. And as I started to go through Chris's courses, I really had that realization, like, because your focus is I'm treating patients. I'm running a practice, I'm running a business. You're not sometimes thinking 20 years down the road, hey, I want to kind of not be in this, I want to kind of take some time for myself, take some long vacations, start to retire, maybe, whatever it may be for you. So that transition plan and getting everything in place now creates that value for that transition down the road. And so that's a key point that I just want to make sure everybody clearly understood, and what Chris is really honing in on here to help you get the maximum value that you're taking home now, but also what is it going to be 20 years from now? Are you going to walk away with $500,000, $1 million or more from the sale of your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny how that happens, Neil, because we've had, I don't know, about 3 or 4 PT practices sell their firms within the last couple of years. Every one of them was unexpected. Every one of them thought, I'm going to be doing this until I'm 65 or 70 years old. And I had one who's 45. He sold his business for, I think, it was like $8 million. I mean, he's like, the offer was too good. I mean,
yeah, sometimes the opportunity comes along, right? Yeah.
Right. What do you do, man? So there's a lot of opportunity out there. There's a lot of firms out there that are buying up PT practices or rolling them up to sell them to a bigger buyer. Well, gee, if you want to build an asset that's worth $2 or $3 million, go talk to them and say, hey, what do I need to build for you to give me $2 or $3 million in 5 years? You can treat it from that perspective. But here's the thing: once you know how to do that, what's to stop you from starting another practice again?
Yeah.
Nothing.
That's
you
what I
know
did.
how to do it.
Yeah.
It's hard to know-how that takes the takes the time. It's funny. So number 5 is you got to plan for viable income growth. You go is push up income. Why? Because the value of a business is what cash flow can be created from that business relative to the risk of creating that cash flow in the eyes of the buyer. It's perceived risk. So if the buyer sees a lot of high income and sees a low risk, then the value of your business is much more. But if they see there's a lot of risk, like your hands are in everything every day trying to run it from your position, and if something happened to you, that income dries up, well then I as a buyer would say that's too risky. I'm not going to pay you nearly as much for that. You see, so you have to really focus on not only income going up, but systems in your business that create that income. That's why step number 4 is systems, and step number 5 creates that income growth. This is a sequence, by the way, correct sequence. Number 5 is to create valuable property assets. Well, what are those? Well, first of all, entities. You should be looking at limited liability companies, not S corporations or C corporations. Why? Because limited liability companies have better asset protection, better creditor protection, better laws than S corps and C corps do. Limited partnerships, very important tool to understand and use. Why would you use these things? Well, because you want to protect yourself from lawsuits. Because as a healthcare provider, you must recognize that the public views you as having money, whether you know it or not, or think it or not. They think you got money, and so as soon as they feel like there's a little bit of hurt, then of course you then have the problem of trying to defend yourself in a lawsuit because that's the lottery nowadays. So, but if you have an S corp right now, I would suggest keeping it, because if you get rid of an S corporation and then get an LLC, which can be taxed as an S corporation or partnership or a C corporation or a sole proprietor, you have to change your contracts because you're going to get a new tax ID number. So as a PT, what you want to do is keep your S corporation, but you'd want to take your assets out of it. You see? So what you could do probably, talk to your attorney, but maybe set up a limited liability company that then acts as a consulting company for the S corporation, or maybe acts as an HR company that provides employees for that S corporation. You have to take a look at how to strip out valuable assets out of a place that is close up against the public, because the public is going to go after that asset that interfaces with them. If all of your assets are behind the wall here, protected by different structures, then if the attack comes here, it's only going to be contained here. Do you see? So that's why asset protection becomes such a critical element. It cannot be separated from practice. I mean, those two are just inextricably linked. Do you see? So that's why it's all of a piece. Intellectual property. I'll also mention another thing. Your brand is massively valuable. So what I would suggest is looking at getting federal trademarks and federal copyrights on federal trademarks, for example, on your company name, your tagline, for example, your logo. You can get copyrights on maybe your policy procedure manual, things like that, because then you have federal protection that no one can take that and reproduce it without your permission. So, and that's the real value. The true value of your business is your policy procedure manual. That's your McDonald's formula, right? So if you ever sell your practice and you keep that policy procedure manual, guess what? You just start another clinic and it's all done. That's the hard part of building a business, is that policy and procedure, get it all dialed in so the systems all run without you. You see? That's the biggest challenge in my business too. So you can see where that becomes incredibly valuable for you. Be financially solvent. I mean, if you are discerning between expense and investment, and you're putting more money into investments, cash is not a problem. Cash is not a problem. And if you're doing the things at home, staying out of debt, keeping your taxes low, keeping your 10% in and growing assets, cash is plentiful. This whole idea of like money is scarce is a lie. It's not true. It's only scarce is because we focus on allocating money to something that doesn't create any future value. Conveniences, iPhones, cars with all the bells and whistles, homes, your house and all the furnishings. The size of your house determines your lifestyle. It just does, because it takes all the money to create all of an image. You see what I mean? So it really becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that we don't have any money, because we're trying to live a lifestyle that honestly we just can't afford. I mean, that's just the truth of it, if you want to pull the smoke out of the air. So we have to be financially solvent. We have to really run a tight ship financially in the business and at home. We really don't have time to afford wasting money, because if you look at it, wasting money is wasting life, because you had to exchange your life for a certain amount of time to get that money. Do you see? So when you start looking at it, like, how much life am I willing to give up for this thing? You start to really reprioritize where your expenses go, right? Where your outlays go, where they go for expense or investment. So you got to be really good at that. If you're ever going to transition out of your business or retire, which is a word I don't like, you got to be emotionally ready to do it. What does emotionally ready mean? That means that you have arrived. You've made your business exactly what you wanted it to be. You are done. You've made it. You are excited about moving on to the next chapter of your life. You got a plan that you can't wait to get to, whatever it is for you. Could be anything. But if you're not there, then you're not emotionally ready. And there are just incredible disaster stories that I can tell you about this. I'll give you an example. I had a PT, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago. We really tried to get him to do a financial plan, and he wouldn't. Sold his business for $3.8 million. The guy was 35 years old. 35 years old. At last I talked to him, he was 40. So that was, what, 3 or 4 years ago? That's the last time I talked to him. How you doing? He said, well, I don't know. I'm kind of like being a stay-at-home dad now. And what are you doing? Well, I'm kind of trading stocks on the internet. And I got a DUI. Yeah. So what is that? He had no game. He had no game at all lined up for after he sold his business. I don't know what happened to him, but I know that if you are not emotionally ready to get out, which obviously he wasn't, if you don't put something there behind that practice transition, if it's 5 years from now or 30 years from now, we end up going downhill. And that's just the way life is. So you need to be emotionally ready, and don't do it until you are. Absolutely. And number 9, then we do the transaction. Then we get the letters of intent and, oh, gee, I'm thinking about selling my business. After all of that, there are 8 steps before we get into, oh, gee, I'm looking at selling my practice. You see what I mean? You can never build a business for maximum value if we start at number 9 and then check, are you emotionally ready? I don't know. Should I sell or not? Gosh. We try to do it in reverse. So what happens when you do any sequence in reverse? You get bad results, right? So this is how you do that. And there's a system that we've developed called a max value plan, where we run you through these nine sequential steps. In these 9 steps, there are 60 value drivers. What's a value driver? It is something that you put into your business that when you do that, a buyer considers it more valuable than another practice that doesn't have it. It drives the value up. There are 60 value drivers that I discovered over 7 different industries that we teach and we help you implement, at least point out to you what to implement in building a practice that when you go through that value creation and then the transfer of that value, you then set yourself up for guaranteed lifetime income, if that is something that you want, which on survey pretty much everybody wants, and then of course be guaranteed by different companies that have the financial wherewithal to be able to do that. So anyway, that is how to build maximum value in your practice. Now, how do you structure take-home pay? That's kind of a big deal. Okay, so here's the bottom line of this. We talk about this 10%, right? So you have 10%, you have your gross income of your practice, $1 million, whatever it is. And then step number 1, this is before anything else, primary, you take 10% and you pay yourself as the owner. This is owner compensation. This is not savings. No one likes to save money. Everybody loves to spend money. I get it. Okay, so you pay yourself as the owner. And then step 2, whatever's left over, 90%, you then pay for your lifestyle, which is, your stuff. And you pay for your overhead, which is, the expenses of your business. Now, the key is you can't spend more than that because, again, we're not using debt, right? So we have to make more money. Now, what's owner compensation? Why do I call it that? Well, do you realize that the day you started in private practice, you started to create value for an entity that was not you? If you got an S corporation, an LLC, whatever, that's a different entity. Under the law, that's kind of like a different person. Okay, so you are an individual, and you give value to an entity that is not you. What is the exchange for that? Where's the contract that sets up, I'm going to provide this value for which you're going to pay me? No one ever told you could do that, huh? I know. No one ever does. Because we all think as practice owners, we're going to pay everybody else first and just hope a little bit of money falls out the bottom for us. Never works. Doesn't work that way. That's not how life works. This is natural law, by the way. This actually creates an effect that you would not believe. So what is owner compensation? Let's talk about that real quick. First of all, it is compensation to you as the owner. For what? Well, who is the person who is taking all the risk for the business? You, right? So you should get compensated for risk. Now, a lot of that comes in profit, and part of your owner compensation is the first part of profit that you're just paying yourself before anybody else. That's kind of what it is. But you take all the risk of what? Your capital, all the money you spent to start the practice. Where's the compensation for that? How about your credit? Did you have to borrow money to start the practice, or do you have to use your credit to get a line of credit or something like that? What's your creditworthiness worth as an asset? How about all the intellectual property that you bring to the table? Your genius in creating your logos and your taglines and your policy procedure manuals and all the marketing materials and all that stuff that you use, right? The culture of your business. What about the entrepreneurial and leadership functions that you provide, the consulting, like the culture of your business, what services that you're going to provide, all that guidance. How about the vision and mission and the leadership of that entity? What about things like picking the officers of who's going to run the day-to-day or the executives? You see, isn't that a valuable service? I mean, directors of publicly traded companies get paid 5-6 figures a year to sit on the board of directors for a corporation. If you're a director, why aren't you getting compensated? Interesting, isn't it? That's right. So when you add all that up, all that value, isn't it worth 10% of the practice gross to pay you? Yes, it is. And you started earning it the day you opened your practice. So really, if you want to look at it, just take the gross income you've had since the day you've opened your practice, and that's the the liability that the business has to you as the owner. Start adding that up. That should get exciting pretty quick, shouldn't it? So that's kind of how it goes. Now, why is this important? Well, because say, Christopher, there's no way I can take 10% of my gross income out. I'm spending all the money I make anyway. I know you are. Because there's a fundamental natural law about business that most people just don't observe. And it's this. Your business will make as much money as it needs to cover the bills. And that's it. Every business that exists makes enough money to cover its expenses. That's what it makes. So, okay, because I ask people, well, how are you doing financially? Well, we're making more than we're spending. We're doing great. That's how we define we're doing great. We made 100, we spent 90. It's great. Okay, that's right. It's true. It's a lot more than that, but you get the idea. So, but if you don't demand a profit, if you don't say, I want a 20% profit margin, and or a 10% profit margin on my owner's compensation, if you make that a bill of your business, then guess what happens? The organization will make enough money to cover the bills. It always does. So you can add 10% in your weekly expenses, owner compensation. And you start doing that, and it may take you a couple months for the organization to start understanding, our expenses went up. Yes, they did. Where's all the money going? Let's go into our expenses. We need to produce more marketing, more treatment, more referrals. Let's go. Get moving, gang, right? And miraculously, guess what happens? The organization will just start making more money to cover the bills, just like it always did before. The only difference is you now forcefully put in a profit as your expense. Really that simple. Now, I had a PT do this a few years ago. He had a $1.5 million clinic, and he came to my seminar. He started this. He says, you know what? I'm just going to start 10% off the top. I asked him 3 years later, so how'd it go? He says, well, I started it. It was tough. First 6 months, I had to borrow for payroll. Taxes were a problem 1 year. I had to deal with that. But that 10% went in and never came out. Okay, good. So then what happened? Well, I think it went very well. I think we had an excellent 3 years. And how much do I have in my account? Because we set up an account for him to flow this money to, right? Well, guess how much money he had accumulated in that account over 3 years? $450,000. He's like, you're kidding me. I'm like, you have $450,000 in your account. 1.5 million over 3 years. He stopped me and said, I would never have had that money had I not done that. Exactly. You wouldn't have. And that's the fundamental secret, is that you have to make your business pay you first. And then when you take that money, you don't spend it on lifestyle. You put it solely and only for your financial future in your financial plan. And when you do that, lo and behold, in 10 years, I'm not kidding, in 10 years, you can be financially independent. You can be. This is completely possible, but you have to do some of these fundamental actions that are extremely simple, and you have to suspend disbelief just for long enough to look into an account after a year and go, where did that $60,000 come from? That never would have been there. And have your own personal reality that that is possible. And then what happens is you never miss it. It's just an expense of the business, like anything else. Now, this is not part of your W-2 salary. This is a expense of the business above and beyond your salary as a PT or as an executive that comes out right as profit right off the top. Okay, so that's how it works. And again, people don't believe it until they do it, and they go through the process, and then they get into habitually creating wealth, and it becomes exponential after a few years. It's a beautiful thing. And no one would ever suspect. It would be just that simple. All right. Now, as I wrap up here, I know I have a few more minutes. Neil, do I have a moment for a real quick tax strategy?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, folks. So how can we reduce taxes? I don't know if you've heard of this one or not, but I'm going to share it with you. It's commonly called the Augusta Rule. And every one of you qualifies for it as a practice owner. Now, this is a way to pay, well, I mean, gee, you can save a significant amount of money, several thousand in taxes, a few to several thousand in taxes by this. So basically, the Augusta Rule is after Augusta, Georgia, where the Memorial Tournament is. And it has to do with the Memorial Tournament and the fact that these houses get rented out by these corporations for 2 weeks every year during the Masters Tournament. So all the folks out there lobbied their congressmen and said, hey, we want to get this money tax-free. So they passed a law where you can rent your home up to 14 days a year and pay no income tax on the rent. And that's true for everybody. So you have a home, right? Place where you live, where you rent or own, and you have a practice where you house the practice. And so if you're the practice owner, where do you hold your shareholder meetings? No, you have to have shareholder meetings. So we're going to assume that you are doing the shareholder meetings. And if you do, this fundamental action is typically done in your office, right? If you know, do the forms, you sit there in your office and you work it. Okay, well, what if you did them in your home? All right, so let's do them in your home. But what rent do you charge for that? Well, go to a couple local hotels, nice hotels, and ask them what it would cost to rent a room for a day. And you get the room rent, and of course the computer, the big screen TV, the whiteboard, all the audiovisual, the breakfast catered, the lunch catered. Okay. Any and all expenses that it would take for you to do a nice shareholder meeting at a local hotel, the nicer hotels, right? And then what you do is you do your meeting at home. You know, you use your computer, the big screen TV, the whiteboard. You do your meetings, you make your minutes and all that stuff. You set up a rental agreement between the business and the homeowner, and then you take your quotes that you got from the couple of different hotels, and you settle on a comparable price of what you're going to rent your home out for that day. Okay, I tell you, in Clearwater Beach, Florida, where I am, the average daily rate would be about $1,200. Okay, so I can rent my home out for $1,200 a day, and be able to hold a shareholder meeting with a rental agreement and all that stuff. The key is to document it. But imagine one shareholder meeting a month. That's 12 days times even if it's $1,000. 12 days times $1,000. That's $12,000 of income that's deductible to the business, that comes into the household tax-free, and you just check on your tax return that you rent your house out for less than 14 days. And if you have all the documentation, then of course you have the deduction. $12,000 deduction for most of you is probably in the range of $3,000 to $5,000, $3,000 to $6,000 of saved income taxes every year, just by making that part of your tax reduction system. That's one of, I don't know, 15 or 20 different tax strategies that we can use to systematically build in tax reduction as you build your empire. Make sense? All right, good. So pretty exciting, huh? That's a cool one. People like that one. All right, so let's move on here. Now, what do we do? And I'll just kind of break this down. Econologics Financial Advisors, we are a financial planning firm. We're a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. We're an insurance agency. We do a lot of high-level financial planning only for private practice owners. The PT, we work with physical therapists. We work with veterinarians, optometrists, dentists, physical functional medicine doctors. But PT is where we started, actually, back in 2009 when we started Econologics, 2008, 2009. And so we have mostly PTs that are clients of ours. Very interesting. Now, the way to get started with us is that we have a system where we pull people. Whoops, we got a carbonite alert. That's interesting. Okay, where we want financial freedom and practice independence for you. And there's principles that we go through Econologics. Now, Econologics is a scientific approach to personal financial planning. It's based on, just like, real quickly, I'll just say, so you're experts in the human body, right? And the body is an organism. And you're also experts in the function of that body based on its systems: musculoskeletal, endocrine, nervous system, digestive, all those systems. And they all have an ideal functioning that you're trained in, so you know what ideal is, so that you can then recognize departures from that ideal, which is, of course, will be diagnosis, and then you have treatment protocols to then correct that outness or that departure from the ideal so you can get it back to optimal function, okay? Well, that's how you work, and then, of course, you have objective measurements to show whether or not that's occurring, like range of motion and other measurements that you use. Okay, well, take that same exact idea for your household. Your household's an organism. It has 9 financial systems. And there's an ideal functioning of each one of those 9 systems, and there's departures from that ideal, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. So we have this thing called the Financial Prosperity Index, and what it does is it measures the parts of the systems that are close to ideal, and those that are departures from the ideal, so that we can work out an exact protocol to attain what we call the optimum financial condition, the optimal health financially of your household organism. And this includes your practice and how it provides wealth into your household. So I'm going to suggest and invite you to go online to financialprosperityindex.com and complete the questionnaire. It's 100 questions. Do it with your spouse if you can. If not, just do it by yourself. And once that questionnaire is completed, then we will have Mendy from our office, who is, she's been here since the beginning of Econologics. She has 17 years of financial experience in our industry, and she will go over the results of your graph with you to show you exactly what we can do to help you with our specific services that we can help you apply and implement to get stellar results in your own personal financial well-being. So we're interested in you achieving financial power. As I wrap up here, I don't know if anybody has any questions. Neil, do you have any questions?
There were a few questions, but they got answered as you were going through. It was on some of the LLC, and people had some good realizations about how it is tough to start putting that 10% away, but I do it. It was heck of a hard thing to do, but it's amazing, like that that really makes such a huge difference. And before you know it, everything, it's like an expense. You know, you don't even know it, and it's like, wow, once in a while, I'll just check what's in the bank, and it's going really well with that. So I did put in the chat bubble for everybody the link, and we'll also be sending that out afterwards to again with the recording of this webinar to those that attended, so that you can connect with Chris. I can tell you from personal experience that I've gone through Chris's Econologics courses, which are amazing, and take what you've learned here today and just expound upon it for like 3-day course. It's really cool. And you come out of that with such certainty. I mean, an area where, you know, we can be good in really good at physical therapy, start to get really good in business and marketing, but finance is where we're not even taught that in elementary school, right, or high school. And just even knowing some of the terms so that you don't feel overwhelmed when you're trying to talk to your financial planner or your attorney or your accountant. You start to have real certainty in your finances, right? And as Christopher said, that you know, your household is really the parent corporation, right? And that's just genius, because at the end of the day, we've all heard horror stories of people that have just focused on their business and struggle through their business and not really put those financial programs into their household. And then at the end of the day, their household suffers, right? So we want, the way here is to just create good certainty moving forward. Just like you're going to learn how to run a business, you got to learn how to run your finances and how to run the finances of the business. Christopher really has that knowledge down pat and can teach you. So thanks for being on the call today, Christopher. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else you would like to say before we sign off here?
I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to be on the call today. Please complete the Financial Prosperity Index. We'll be happy to go over the results with you and to see how we can help you achieve financial freedom and practice independence while you live your art. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christopher. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you being on the call today. And here's to your success. Thanks.
Thanks.